Laura Weil, a young journalist, had always been interested in the secrets of abandoned places. One day she came across the Blackhill Sanatorium, an old mental hospital on a remote hill. Legend said that the place was filled with evil, and people who went there did not always return. Haunted by curiosity and a desire to uncover a dark story, Laura decided to conduct an investigation that would become the culmination of her career. In the morning fog, the building seemed unreal, as if its outlines were hidden under a layer of smoke. The high gates creaked, as if welcoming a new guest, and walking along the gravel path, Laura stopped in front of the main doors, covered in cracks and mold. Just one day, she reassured herself. Just one day, and it will all be over. However, as soon as she crossed the threshold, the air became thick and stagnant, enveloping her with a strange heaviness. The translucent windows let in only dim light, and the whole atmosphere inside resembled fragments of forgotten times. Long corridors covered with cobwebs branched in different directions, like endless labyrinths, beckoning her deeper. She spent the first few hours exploring the building. The walls were covered with faded wallpaper. Piles of old documents lay on the floor. Laura picked up one of the sheets and noticed the date 1934. Judging by the content, it was an old medical report. It described attempts to apply new treatments to patients, which at that time were experimental. With each new document, Laura became more and more convinced that Blackhill Sanatorium was hiding much more terrible stories than she imagined. One of the reports belonged to Dr. Henry Archer himself, the owner and founder of the institution. His notes were filled with pathos and some kind of strange obsession. In them, he described his experiments on liberating the consciousness of patients, trying to take them beyond the mind. The doctor believed that it was possible to achieve a state in which a person would be freed from all the shackles of reality. But it was obvious from the text that many patients could not stand it and simply disappeared. When Laura looked out the window for a moment, she noticed that the sky was beginning to be covered with storm clouds. The light in the building became even dimmer, and each of her steps echoed dully along the empty corridors. Climbing the narrow stairs, she found herself on the third floor, where, according to her information, the most problematic patients were located. The corridor here was completely empty, and the light penetrated through the broken windows almost in drops. Strange marks were visible on the walls, as if someone had tried to leave a message but did not have time. Laura ran her fingers over the scratches and felt an icy cold. Suddenly, she heard a quiet rustling behind her, and her heart sank. She turned around, no one. However, there was no feeling that she was alone. In the farthest room, she found an abandoned cot chained to the floor and an old medical gurney with rusty stains. The walls around were covered with symbols that Laura had never seen before. Among them, she noticed one phrase where the mind is distorted: there is no escape. On the table lay a diary, the pages of which were eaten away by mold and moisture. Laura picked it up, and a strange feeling of anxiety came over her, as if this diary had once belonged to someone important. The first pages described simple procedures and observations, but the further she turned, the darker the contents became. Patient 27, she read in a trembling voice. Reaction to drug is unexpected. Condition worsens. He speaks of whispers in the walls. Admits that he can see things that no one else can see. Feels fear of what lurks in the dark. She was so absorbed in her reading that she didn't notice rustling sounds in the corridors. When Laura looked up, she thought she saw a shadow flash by at the end of the corridor. And then she heard a voice, faint and muffled, as if someone was whispering in her ear, "You've come too far." Laura froze. Her body seemed rooted to the spot. She tried to catch the source of the sound, but the shadows around her began to thicken, as if taking shape. With horror, she realized that they filled the corridor, blocking the exit. The voice grew louder. The shadows began to move, and figures, like blurry silhouettes, surrounded her. She ran back, trying to find a way to the exit, but the corridors seemed to twist, changing shape and direction. Soon she returned to the same corridor from which she had started. She heard the rustling getting closer. Laura tried to jump out the window, but when she looked through it, she discovered that behind the glass was not the street, but the same operating room, with the same patients standing in a circle. Reality began to distort, and she realized that she was trapped. Blackhill was not going to let her go, just like his other victims.